Some voices define an era. Cass Elliott's was the sound of the late 60s, the soundtrack of the Summer of Love, the anthem of the California Dream, the song of a generation of hippies. When she opened her mouth to sing, it was as if the sun lit up the room, powerful, warm, full of soul and unstoppable life force. Her voice could calm, inspire, and make you believe that anything was possible. The voice was perfect. She wasn't. This is the story of a shocking paradox. A woman with one of the greatest voices of her generation had to fight her way into the very group she herself would make legendary. Her talent was obvious to everyone, but her body didn't fit the cruel standards of beauty. It's a story of injustice, of betrayal, of humiliation. But far more than that, it's a story of unbreakable spirit and ultimate triumph. A story of how raw brilliance can tear down the thickest walls of prejudice, of how a single voice proved louder than 1,000 jeers, and brought fame and millions to those who once told her no. Before the world knew her as Mama Cass, she was Ellen Naomi Cohen from Baltimore, and she was a firecracker. This is not the story of a shy girl who stumbled into fame by accident. This is the story of a larger-than-life personality who simply could not stay in the shadows. First, she was phenomenally intelligent. Tests measured her IQ at 165, genius level. That explained her famously sharp wit. With a single remark, she could cut down any snob, and her humor and quick mind made her the life of every room she walked into. She wasn't just the heavy girl. She was the brightest, funniest, and smartest woman in the room. And second, she had a God-given gift, a voice that could melt glaciers. In the early 60s, on the folk scene of New York's Greenwich Village, she was already a rising star, performing with groups like the Big Three and the Mugwumps. She was winning audiences over. Fellow musicians adored her. Her home was always open. She was like a mother to the whole bohemian crowd, always ready to feed, to comfort, to make people laugh. Cass was independent, vibrant, and charismatic, the complete artist. She had everything it took for success: a brilliant mind, a magnetic personality, and a once-in-a-generation voice. It seemed the world was hers for the taking. She was close friends with John Phillips, his wife Michelle, and Denny Doherty. Together, they dreamed of forming a group that would change the music world. And Cass believed, deep down, that her voice was meant to be at the heart of that new universe. What she didn't know was that her closest friends were preparing to deal her the cruelest betrayal. When John Phillips, his beautiful wife Michelle, and their close friend Denny Doherty decided to form a new group, the puzzle seemed almost complete. They had talent, they had songs, they had the right look, but one crucial piece was missing: a voice strong enough to be their foundation, and that voice belonged to their best friend, Cass Elliot. Cass was certain she was part of the plan. She spent days and nights with them, singing, arranging, contributing. She was their muse, their mascot, their heartbeat. But when the moment of truth came, the group's leader, John Phillips, delivered a verdict that was as cruel as it was humiliating. He told her she couldn't be in the group, and the reason had nothing to do with music. "You're too fat," he said bluntly. "You don't fit our image." To understand this, you need the context of the times. These were the 1960s, the age of Twiggy and the paper-thin fashion model. John Phillips, with his keen eye for commercial success, wasn't looking to form just a band. He wanted a postcard-perfect vision of the summer of love: two handsome men, two ethereal, long-haired hippie girls. He wasn't just selling music, he was selling an image. And in that carefully staged picture, there was no room for Cass. Her heart was breaking. To him, Cass, vibrant, larger than life, full of humor and warmth, ruined the illusion. He feared that with her in the lineup, TV producers and magazines would refuse to showcase the group. This wasn't just a professional setback. It was a betrayal. Her closest friends, the people she loved and believed in, were essentially telling her, "Your extraordinary talent means nothing because your body doesn't fit our standard of beauty." For anyone, it would have been a crushing blow. For Cass, who had endured a lifetime of ridicule about her weight, it was a public humiliation delivered by the very people she trusted most. They placed appearance above both talent and friendship. Her dream seemed shattered, but what they didn't realize was that in trying to erase her, they awakened the very force that would make her unforgettable. They had underestimated the strength of the woman they tried to push aside. After the cruel rejection, Cass did not give up. She was devastated, but not broken. With the kind of stubborn determination that defines greatness, she kept following the group. When they left for the Virgin Islands to work on their sound in seclusion, she went with them. She believed that sooner or later they would realize their mistake. And then something extraordinary happened. One night, while the group was in a club that was still under construction, a heavy metal plumbing pipe came loose from the ceiling and struck Cass on the head. The blow was violent. She suffered a concussion and endured weeks of terrible headaches. It seemed that on top of her humiliation, life had now dealt her a cruel physical injury as well. But when the headaches finally passed, Cass discovered something remarkable. She stepped up to the microphone, sang a note, then another, and realized that she could sing higher than ever before. According to her own words, which later became legend, that blow to the head had mysteriously extended her vocal range by 3 full notes. It sounds like a myth, doesn't it? Perhaps it was all in her mind, or perhaps it was fate intervening. Whatever the cause, Cass turned that strange accident into her greatest advantage. She showcased her new voice to the group, and John Phillips, who had been struggling to craft rich, complex harmonies, finally gave in. He realized that Cass's voice wasn't just an addition. It was the missing piece that made the whole puzzle work. Fate, in the form of a falling pipe, had literally hammered this truth into him. The humiliating rejection was overturned. Cass Elliot was at last officially a member of the group, and with that, the band we now know as the Mamas and the Papas was ready to take on the world. Once Cass Elliot's voice took its rightful place at the center of their sound, magic happened. The missing spark they had been searching for was finally there. 4 voices, 2 male, 2 female, wove together in perfect harmony, and the Mamas and the Papas were born. Their rise wasn't just fast, it was explosive. Their very first single, the now legendary California Dreamin', became the anthem of an entire generation. Melancholy yet full of hope, it captured the longing to escape winter cold for the California sun, perfectly echoing the mood of the youth. And at the heart of it all was Cass. Her powerful, pure, soul-filled voice cut through the arrangement and carved itself into the listener's memory forever. Hit after hit followed. Monday soared to number 1. Dedicated to the One I Love, showcased her voice so prominently, so beautifully, that many still consider it her solo masterpiece. Then came Words of Love, Creek Alley. Their sound filled radios everywhere, from New York to London. and the truth was undeniable. Cass, the one they had once rejected, became their secret weapon. John Phillips was the master songwriter, Michelle the photogenic star, Denny the smooth tenor. But the soul, the heart, the driving force of the group was Mama Cass. She was the glue that held their harmonies together and the cannon that blasted them up the charts. The irony of fate was staggering. John Phillips, the man who once told her no, was now writing songs to showcase her extraordinary voice. The group that feared the fat girl would ruin their image ended up becoming a symbol of beauty and harmony because of her. They achieved everything they dreamed of: fame, acclaim, millions of dollars, and a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And all of it was delivered to them by the voice of the woman they once cast aside. She didn't just win her place, she made them legends. The world was at her feet. The mamas and the papas were at the top, and Cass Elliot's voice was their banner. She had everything she had fought for: recognition, fame, money. But in a cruel twist of fate, the very group that became her greatest triumph also turned into a golden cage, one filled with loneliness and heartbreak. Even as a global superstar, she could not escape the ridicule. The press and TV hosts continued to mock her weight with cruel jokes. She was forever tagged as the fat one from the mamas and the papas, as if her extraordinary talent was nothing more than an afterthought. She hid the pain behind her famous, wide smile and razor-sharp wit, but every jab left a scar. Yet the deepest wound of all came from unrequited love. Cass was hopelessly, desperately in love with her bandmate, the handsome tenor, Denny Dougherty. She adored him, but his heart belonged to someone else: Michelle Phillips, the beautiful, slender blonde, and the wife of the group's leader, John Phillips. It was a real-life soap opera, played out on the world stage. Day after day, Cass had to watch the man she loved suffer for another woman. She had to sing harmonies on songs written about their secret affair. She became their confidant, their mama, the friend they both leaned on, while inside she was living her own private hell, set against the backdrop of the most beautiful harmonies in the world. She was forced to lend her powerful, healing voice to songs about the love between the man who would never love her and the woman who was her friend. Every note of triumph on stage was, for her, a note of personal defeat behind the curtain. Cass was the soul of the group, the center that kept everyone together, but she herself remained tragically alone. Success gave her the adoration of millions of strangers, but not what she longed for most: love and acceptance from the one person closest to her. And slowly, she began to understand that if she wanted real happiness, she would have to escape the golden cage. By the late 1960s, the mamas and the papas had collapsed under the weight of internal conflicts and tangled love affairs. For many, it was the end of an era, but for Cass Elliot, it was the beginning. She was tired of living inside someone else's vision, tired of playing mama to a band of selfish children. She decided it was time to take control of her own destiny. It was time to fly solo. It was an incredibly brave step. To the public, she was Mama Cass, 1/4 of a legendary group. No one knew if audiences would accept her as a solo artist, but Cass threw aside the doubts and dove headfirst into her work. She shed the stage name that tied her to the past. No longer Mama, but simply Cass Elliot, and she made it work. She released successful albums, hosted her own television specials, and played sold-out shows in Las Vegas and London. She proved that her talent didn't need support. She was the force. The pinnacle of her solo career and her personal declaration came in the form of Make Your Own Kind of Music. It wasn't her biggest chart hit, but over time, it became her anthem. Its words perfectly captured her life's journey. Create your own music, sing your own special song, even if nobody else sings along. That was her answer to everyone. To John Phillips, who once told her no. To Denny Doherty, who never returned her love. To the critics who mocked her weight. She was telling them, and the whole world, it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter if I fit your standards. I have my voice, my music, and my path, and I will follow it. At last, she gained what she had been chasing for so long, the freedom to be herself. She was at the top of her game, adored by fans, and it seemed as though a long, happy life was finally ahead of her. At the peak of her solo success, after a string of triumphant sold-out concerts in London on July 29, 1974, Cass Elliott's heart gave out. She died in her sleep of heart failure. She was just 32 years old. The world had lost one of the greatest voices of her generation. But even in death, the same cruel injustice that had followed her in life did not let her rest. The first doctor to examine her body, unable to find an immediate cause, carelessly remarked that a half-eaten ham sandwich had been found near her bed. The press seized on that single detail, and thus was born the vile, humiliating myth that Mama Cass choked on a sandwich. That cruel invention, born of prejudice against her weight, haunted her for decades, overshadowing the truth of her talent. Only later did the official autopsy debunk the myth completely, confirming that the cause of death was a weakened heart. But by then, the damage had already been done. So, what does her story amount to? A tragedy? In one sense, yes. It is the tragedy of how cruel society can be to those who don't fit into its narrow standards. But far more than that, it is an anthem of the unbreakable power of talent. Cass Elliot proved that it doesn't matter how you look, what you weigh, or what people say behind your back. If you have a gift, if you have a voice, sing. Sing louder than the laughter, louder than the doubts, louder than the betrayals. She made her own kind of music, and today, when we hear her immortal voice in songs like California Dreamin' or Make Your Own Kind of Music, we understand that voice was stronger than prejudice, stronger than unrequited love, and even stronger than early death. Her critics tried to cage her talent with mockery. Fate only gave her 32 short years. And a foolish myth tried to bury her legacy under lies. But they all failed, because a voice born from the heart will always be louder, and hers still sings. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell so you won't miss the next amazing stories. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.